Okay, town meeting members, please come forward, take your seats. We're going to reestablish the quorum. Mr. Sellers will be the teller in the first division. Mr. Dufresne in the second division. Mr. Hampson in the third division. All town meeting members present, please rise for the establishment of a quorum. While we're reestablishing the quorum, I just want to announce that the Falmouth Eats program, which I announced at the beginning of town meeting, this Thursday is at the Jewish congregation in Hatchville. On April 18th, it's at the John Wesley United Church at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock for both of the events. Yep, we're counting. This is the new, they've been trying to fix the light for the grain.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, so that they've done those kind of, they're testing with different lights. And they have the new, we have the new channel 15 guy. And he's upset that it's so grainy, so he's been trying different lighting.
Well, I asked him to reflect them somewhere else, but like I said,
Right in
you
there.
can't even see it. I said, I can't see what I'm writing.
I'm having trouble getting my glasses.
I have to cover my
Okay, here we go. Quorum. Mr. Hampson in the third division. '59 in the third division. Mr. Sellers in the first division. 46. Mr. Dufresne in the second division. 85. By a counted vote of 190, we have a quorum and we're back into session. We completed Article 20 before the break. We're now at Article 21. Article 21, recommendation of the Board of Selectmen is indefinite postponement. Is there anyone who would make a positive motion for Article 21? Hearing none, I'll recognize the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen for the main motion of indefinite postponement.
I've moved for indefinite postponement on Article 21.
You've all heard the main motion, indefinite postponement on Article 21. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. You guys have it unanimous. Article 22.
Mr. Moderator, I move that a sum of $8,269,808 is appropriated to pay the cost of decommissioning, dismantling, and removing Wind 1 and Wind 2, repaying obligations due on account of such wind turbines, and that to meet this appropriation, the Treasurer, with the approval of the Selectmen, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to the passage of special legislation contained in this motion, and to issue bonds or notes therefore. No sums shall be borrowed or expended unless and until the town shall have voted to exclude the amounts required to repay any such borrowing authorization by this vote, or any previously incurred on Wind 1 from the limits of Chapter 59, Section 21C of the General Laws, also known as Proposition 2.5. And further, the Board of Selectmen is authorized to submit a petition to the legislature for enactment of special legislation as follows. And the Board of Selectmen is authorized to accept recommended changes by legislative council or bond council to further effectuate the purposes of this article. The act pertaining to the issuance of bonds or notes by the town of Falmouth. This is the special legislation. Be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives in general court assembled and by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1. Notwithstanding the provisions of any general or special law to the contrary, the town of Falmouth is authorized to borrow from time to time such amounts of money as may be necessary to pay costs of decommissioning, dismantling, and removing wind turbines, repaying grants received on account of such wind turbines, refinancing outstanding debt related to such wind turbines without regard to the present value savings requirements of Section 21A of Chapter 44, and for the payment of any and all other costs incidental and related hereto. Bonds and notes issued under this Act shall be issued for a term not to exceed 20 years from the date of, or dates of issue, and the maturity of any bonds issued by the town under this Act either shall be arranged so that for each issue the annual combined payments of principal and interest payable in each year commencing with the first year in which the principal payment is required shall be as nearly equal as practical to the, in the opinion of the municipal treasurer and collector of taxes, and shall be arranged in accordance with the schedule provided for a more rapid amortization of principal. Bonds and notes issued under this Act shall be outside the limit of indebtedness prescribed in Section 10 of Chapter 44, and except as otherwise provided in this Act, shall be subject to the applicable provisions of said Chapter 44. Section 2, this Act shall take effect upon its passage. That's the motion, Mr. Moderator. If I can defer it to the town manager, and then I'd like to make some comments after that.
Before we do that, I'm going to have a notification from members of the zoning board. Mr. McNamara.
Matt McNamara, Precinct 7. I'm also chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are 3 other active members of the Zoning Board of Appeals that are also town meeting members: Ken Foreman, Patty Johnson, David Haddad, and myself. The 4 of us wish to go on the record of town meeting that we will not be participating in the discussion or voting this evening on the upcoming wind turbine articles. There is currently an appeal pending before the Zoning Board of Appeals which involves the town-owned wind turbines. We're taking this step in order to remain unbiased during the pending appeal. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Harper. Ms. Harper? Mr. Suso, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Julian Suso, Town Manager, a summary of some background information for town meeting. These are the steps necessary to move forward on this initiative that the Board of Selectmen has put in motion. It will involve an authorization to borrow with the action of town meeting that's before you this evening, followed by a ballot vote to exclude debt payments, therefore raising additional taxes. The authorization to borrow requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting this evening. It would remove turbines, both wind turbines, and restore the site. State statute limits borrowing for defined purposes. Special legislation is therefore required to address this deficiency that was referred to in the motion read by Selectman Chair Kevin Murphy. Continuing on the authorization to borrow, Wind 1 is already permanently bonded. There is no additional town meeting action necessary in that regard. Authorization to borrow related to Wind 2, a payback of loan. It is not permanently bonded at present. Special legislation is therefore required. The ballot questions or vote are necessary to exclude debt and to raise revenue to fund the costs as follows. The debt for Wind 1, principal and interest, $5,717,862. Wind 2, principal debt, $4,865,000. The principal for the removal and restoration costs, $3,404,808. Wind turbines dismantled and decommissioned, process only after receiving the borrowing authorization from town meeting we've referred to, the special legislation to which we've referred already, and a majority vote at the ballot. Financial impacts further. The town has issued $4,992,000, that representing principal only, in unexcluded debt. Wind energy revenues have supported the prior short-term payments and the last 3 years of principal and interest on those long-term notes for Wind 1. The total remaining principal and interest is $5,717,862. Win 2 obligations. The town has authorized $4,865,000 in 0% interest state loans, again for Win 2, to be 100% forgiven upon compliance with the terms of that contract. When the town removes Win 2, the loan is required to be paid back to the state with interest. Expenses to shut down and remove the 2 turbines and restore the site, the direct costs, procurement, permitting, dismantling, and removal of both turbines, and site restoration, approximately $1 million. Legal, technical, and consulting costs related to that process, estimated in the range of $150,000 to $350,000. Renewable energy certificates to the Mass Clean Energy Center, $1,010,623. Advanced payment to the town for 48,924 renewable energy certificates, or RECs as they are called, the acronym. If we do not deliver the certificates, the refund value is $2,054,808, or $42 for each REC. Expense to shut down and remove 2 turbines and restore site continued. Direct expense, as already noted, $1 million. REC contracts, $2,054,808. Those consulting numbers, as already noted, the top end of the range, $350,000. Total, $3,404,808. Annual operating expenses, this is Article 23. If I could note that to Mr. Moderator, unless you'd prefer I wait. That is the forthcoming article. $140,000 is requested to fund FY 2013, our current budget year, as well as the coming budget year beginning in July 1, FY 2014, replacement energy cost for wastewater treatment utility purposes. That concludes my remarks on this, Mr. Moderator. We're happy to answer questions, or we can go directly to Selectman Chair Kevin Murphy for his comments now, if we may.
Sure. Let's see if there's any questions about this, and then we'll have the presentation and open debate. Questions about the presentation? Yep, microphone down here.
Hi, Douglas Brown, Precinct 9. I'd just like to know what's the current deficit that we're operating at, and if you could estimate including maintenance, if you have that.
Current estimated deficit with the present operating characteristics of the 2 turbines?
Correct.
Approximately $100,000 annually.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions on the slide presentation? Yep. Mr. Putnam? Mr. Finneran?
I just question the necessity of spending the money to remove them, and why not just leave them standing?
No, we're actually questions about the information. We'll get into the debate
Sorry.
stuff after. Questions about the information presented. Gentleman in the center back? Yep.
Could we have, Dick Kaler, Precinct 6, could we have a total for all those numbers?
8,269,808. That's the main motion. Right. What? Yeah, that's the total cost. The total appropriation that they're seeking to borrow is $8.2 million. You want to put that slide back up, the first slide? Or it wasn't the first, but the one that has the... Keep going.
It's just under $14 million for the total of those 3 items, if that's the number you're seeking.
Keep going. They showed me another slide. That's not it. They were showing me a slide up here. Well, whatever you've got in front of you is not in this presentation.
It was one of the early slides, about the 4th one in. That slide. The total of those 3 figures is just under $14 million.
What slide do you have in front of you? Is that a different PowerPoint? Okay, different version of the PowerPoint, okay. Yep. Mr. Schmidt? Right with the mic, please.
I believe this is only a part of the financial impact. I'm wondering, in addition to these funds, if we cease operating the turbines, what is the estimate of the revenue that might have been lost over the 18-year remaining life? And what also would be the cost of the loss of the energy generated that we are currently using? Those two items, I think, are additional financial impacts, and the monies, obviously, if we don't have the revenues, will have to be made up in some other fashion. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I believe the intent is to answer one or both those questions in a presentation yet to come.
Okay,
If we may do that,
Yep.
we may follow that process.
sure. How's that, what's the next presentation? Who's making a presentation?
I know Mr. Murphy was going to make comments, but I believe Selectman Jones also has some remarks that would deal with the first question this gentleman has asked, and we can take up the second one as well at that point if we may.
Okay, so Mr. Murphy, why don't you do yours, and then we'll do the Jones presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, town meeting. I'd like to give a broad stroke of how we're going to move forward this evening, and I think some other members of the Board of Selectmen will be speaking with you as well tonight. I'd like to address how we came to this decision. Some folks believe that we were bullied into this decision. On my part, I can tell you and I can reassure you that I've never been bullied in my life, and including in this situation. This was a very thoughtful process. The people that we thought of in making this decision was the entire community. It was not the folks on one side or the other. I believe the people we thought of was the town of Falmouth as a whole. Tonight, I hope we have a healthy civil debate on these wind turbines. There are a lot of misconceptions out there, folks, and I want you to listen carefully as we go through the evening. There's a lot of half-truths, and there's a lot of exaggerations. There's a lot of would-haves, could-haves, should-haves, and there's a lot of hoping. But there are a lot of realities here. The process and the proposal we're bringing forward to you tonight has certainty. A lot of the other proposals that you will hear has a lot of uncertainty. I'd like to clear up some misunderstandings. The Board of Selectmen did not make a hasty decision. The Board of Selectmen hoped that we could build consensus in this community, and over the last 2 years has worked diligently to try to come to a middle ground to please everybody. In this particular case, that did not happen. That was unattainable. We could and should run them 24/7. When the Board of Selectmen entered into a curtailment mode of 12 hours on and 12 hours off, after that period of time, we realized there were some noise violations based on the state standard. So at this point in time, it would be impossible to run them 24/7. Curtailment works. The particular equipment and the neighbors continue to be affected. Buying affected houses is an alternative. Folks, in this community, we have never, ever done an unfriendly eminent domain taking. And that includes when we put in Route 28 coming into this community. We're not that type of community. We're a community that works together to find a solution. We don't take people's property just because it's good for other people here. The greater good. I hear about the greater good of all. The greater good of all in this community is that we work together to solve the problems we have moving forward. We don't need to pit neighbor against neighbor, neighborhood against neighborhood. Although Falmouth did everything in regard to the process of this permitting according to the state standard, we followed the rules. There were some mistakes that were made, but hindsight is 20/20. There are no fingers to point at any one individual. We need to move forward. The state is hell-bent on having not having a failure in regard to wind energy. That was proven when the ERA money was not forgiven. The federal government had told us that as long as we finished the project and the project was completed, that would be forgiven. Unfortunately, the state has the final say. This location is not the place. There's nothing wrong with the clean energy project and the clean energy in this community and in this state. But this location and this particular project, there is something wrong. This goes to the soul of this community. We haven't had an issue like this since Cranberry Bogs, folks. We have so much productivity remaining in this community to move forward. What does it profit a man if he gains the world and he loses the loss of his soul? And I'm going to look at each and every one of you tonight and ask you, do you want to lose your soul of this community? Because when we pit neighbor against neighbor and we pit one project versus another, when it's time for you in your neighborhood, when it's time for you to get the help of those other neighbors, people will be saying, hooray for me and the hell with everybody else. That's not what we do in Falmouth. When we move forward with the water filtration, those folks on wells are going to vote for that and going to pay those taxes. They're not going to need that water filtration. When we look at sewering or wastewater options, we're going to talk about those coastal embayments over on the South Coast. But you know what? Those folks inland and those same folks who are asking for our help are not going to benefit from those sewerage projects or those alternatives. Yes, we might benefit in the greater good because it's going to make our coastal embayments better. But are they going to directly benefit? No. But are they going to be good neighbors? Sure. When we look at beach nourishment projects, those folks who don't go to a beach, do we do the project? Sure. When we do schools, our senior and elder population chips in and builds a school and pays for that. We're, again, a community. We work together when it's time to solve a problem. We're going to be looking at a senior center. Do those young families think of their future and when they might need that? We're going to need them. We're going to need everybody in this community to work together. The Board of Selectmen, you have asked them to be leaders in this community. We've listened, we've deliberated. We've listened to everybody's viewpoints. Over the last year, there were countless number of meetings. We hope we could come to consensus. But sooner or later, someone has to fish or cut bait. And you know what, folks? There are other costs here involved besides the $14 million. The costs are the costs that are going to affect this community in the years moving ahead. We'll have the scars of those turbines as you ride by them for those folks who don't want them in many years to come. We want to see successful renewable energy projects. And to do that, we're going to need to do that as a community as well. We're going to have to chip in and find projects that work. The decision you're going to make tonight is part of the decision process. One thing that has been loud and clear is that everyone has an opinion about this. And I think that your decision tonight will be to move it to the voters. Those are the folks who are ultimately going to make the final decision or should be given that opportunity. You know, I just want to remind you, what goes around comes around. Each and every one of us are going to need each other at some point in time. Right now, we have some folks up on the hill who need us and want us to act. Sometimes you have to take a step backward to take 5 steps forward. I'm going to turn this over and let you folks have your debate. If you want some figures, and Doug Jones is going to be able to provide you. He was our representative on the wind turbine option group. He'll be able to give you those figures after we hear some debate. But folks, please keep in mind, this is for the greater good of this community. The Finance Committee voted unanimously. The Board of Selectmen voted unanimously. We need to solve a problem. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
At this time, I'd just like to answer the specific question. The projected, and this is projected, we're not sure, is estimated between $7 and $8 million over the life of the turbines of lost revenue.
Okay. All right, we're going to open up discussion. I'm going to ask, we know this has been a contentious issue in the past in that meeting, so I'm going to ask for folks to refrain from personalities and to really let's focus on the reasons why we want to either do this or not do this for the purposes of making the decision. Okay, Mr. Latimer.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Jones, could you restate those numbers, please?
The projected estimates of revenue lost, with all other expenses taken care of, would be about $7 to $8 million. On top of the $14 million that we're talking about here. Of 18 years of running the turbines.
18 years. Okay.
That's maximum projected running them uncurtailed.
Okay. Mr. Latimer.
Thank you. Richard Latimer, Precinct 2. First, I'd just like to give notice of reconsideration on Article 21, as it involves the expenditure of money.
Okay.
I don't think I'm getting into personalities by pointing out that it is not good public policy to spend $14 million, to lose $7 or $8 million, to do so in a way that squanders money we've already spent. That is not good public policy. In fact, I'll refrain from using a little bit stronger language than what it actually is, out of deference to the Board of Selectmen. However, I must say, in regard to Mr. Murphy's comment, what he was telling and what Mr. Jones was telling us at the precinct meetings was, well, this was the most expedient way to put this behind us. In other words, what they were saying was, this is a matter for them of political expediency. Yes, they made a political mistake, and now they want us to pay for that political mistake. And they are doing it in a way that is totally irresponsible to the 30,000 people who live in Falmouth as a whole. This is a teardown that's going to cost us millions of dollars, that's only going to benefit about a few hundred people at most. It's going to hurt the rest of us. That money that we're foregoing is going to be taking money out of other budgets. It's going to be spending more to provide electricity to that wastewater plant while not getting the revenue that we get back from selling the excess. That's going to take money away from the police, the fire, the school. That's going to hurt us. So that is not in the interest of the community as a whole. Now, there are better ways to do this. I'm going to say that the complaints that I've heard, and I'm looking at this as a lawyer, to me say what they're complaining about up there is essentially a land taking. There's been some talk about this theory of wind turbine syndrome that is totally undocumented medically. There is no peer-reviewed medical literature to talk about wind turbine syndrome. A group of physicians here in Falmouth have pointed out that it is entirely consistent with the kind of nocebo effect where somebody suggests that you're sick and then you get sick. And there are people, anti-wind forces, that are driving that. We know that. But leaving that aside, I am going to say these people are damaged. They have suffered damage because of this. We should do something about it. The Constitution of the United States says what we do about it. The responsible thing is we take the property for fair value. That's what the Constitution says. It doesn't say we squander taxpayer money for political reasons. Now, one way we can do that is we can simply go to the people and offer them, if they are really aggrieved and they cannot tolerate this, offer them pre-turbine value for their property. That would be fair compensation. If they want to do that, that's not a taking, that is an arm's length negotiation. If they take that, the people that take that, fine. If they don't want to, offer them to pay them an amount of money equivalent to the value that they have lost in their property, with a release that runs with the land, and therefore they want to live there, they feel they lost their property, but they've been compensated. Fair compensation according to the Constitution. People who won't do either of them, well then unfortunately we may have to do a taking. But as far as being a hostile taking, that wouldn't necessarily have to be if there's good faith on both sides. That's the way to resolve this. By the way, when Route 28A went in, it was the state that took the property. That's a state highway, not a town road. Now, This has been rejected by the selectmen. Why? Well, because it's of uncertainty. Well, yes, of course it's uncertainty, but it's also uncertain that we're going to get the voters of Falmouth to fund this. I think as far as doing a friendly taking or a hostile taking, we'd be much better off with regard to getting state support for doing that. We're not going to get any state support for the selectmen's proposal. So I would urge everyone to vote against this, send a message to the selectmen to go back to the drawing board. I want to make one final point. Why has nobody been talking about simply replacing those turbines with smaller ones? Why? I'm going to tell you why. It's because the people that are behind this whole thing, that are really fomenting it, are just anti-wind. And that is contrary to what the policies that we in Falmouth should be promoting. Thank you.
Mr. Finneran. No, you're on the list, Mr. Stetcher.
This pits money against people's welfare, and I come down on the side of people's welfare. But as far as the money issue, I again question the necessity to take the turbines down. And secondly, I question, is there any way we can kick these wrecks down the renewable energy road and not be responsible for them at the moment and try to replace them in the future with some other project?
Mr. Murphy.
I think it's important to note that the $3 million and some odd $1,000 is the high number. We may be able to get additional revenue to sell these. We may be able to. We're walking through uncharted territory. There is a number out there of what we would get, but this Board of Selectmen had to put in a number at the high end that these turbines on the secondary market had no value and that we would have to pay. The only way we know that is to move forward with an RFP and be able to move forward responsibly, to be able to make sure that if that doesn't happen, we have all of the money to be able to dismantle them and dispose of them. We're hoping, and again, wishing and hoping is not part of the process here. We're giving you a resolute fact of what the high end would be. And that's something that we know would be the high end. It could be less. That $3 million, $3.5 million could be a lot less than it currently is. In regard to the RECs, we would hope that folks in this room, as well as the voters, would send a clear message to the state that their energy policy is not bad, but this particular project in regard to it is a failed one, and they need to help the town to move forward. But I think, it's a personal viewpoint, I think it's necessary for them to be shown that this town is resolute in regard to these wind turbines, as well as the voters need to be resolute to show the state that they want to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Driscoll.
Good evening, Kathy Driscoll, Precinct 7. There's been some interesting things stated here tonight, and I want to thank everyone for listening to everything that everyone has to say. There's going to be a lot of comparisons and some conflicting statements, as Chairman Murphy stated. This is a complex issue. I sat on the wind turbine options process for the 8 months process to review the various options that could be brought forward to this body. First, I'd like to state that you did not receive a report on the wind turbine options process. You don't know what the options are that were brought before the Board of Selectmen unless you took the time to read the report, and then you may have had questions. That information is not available to you. There are a lot of varying questions, a lot of varying numbers within the report itself. The Board of Selectmen wanted to make sure that you had something before you this evening for this town meeting. The report was rushed. We needed to get to the end of the report. We needed to put that information into the report and have it available because the timeline to get to a warrant article was very, very small, very, very short. When the information came to the Board of Selectmen, they listened to the report, they took some public comment, they made a decision. They voted only to bring taking the turbines down to this body. The total cost, from my calculation on this project over the next 18 to 20 years, is going to be upwards of $25 million. That is the $5 million for Wind 2. That's the $4+ million for the debt on Wind 1. That is the lost revenue. According to the wind turbine options report, the lost revenue over 18 years is actually $8.4 million, not $7 to $8 million. Then there is also the money that needs to be appropriated over the next 18 to 20 years for the electricity at the wastewater treatment plant. That's another $2 million. Yes, some of the numbers that have been shown before you are the high end. Okay? But again, we don't even know that these numbers are going to be the high end. We could be here in the fall asking for additional money, whether that be for restoration, for removal, whether that is going to be applied toward legal fees and settlement. We haven't gotten there. And those are serious considerations and costs that need to be brought forward. Chairman Murphy stated some very important projects in his opening remarks. One of the things that he actually discussed were very specific services and benefits to everyone in town. Our beaches provide a service and benefit to us. Our water and wastewater provides a service and a benefit to us. The roads provide service and benefit. Our schools, our police, our fire. Whether we use them or not, they are there for us. To spend our tax dollars over the next 20 years with nothing in return is not a benefit to us. This is a benefit to a very small core group of people. I'm not saying that that core group of people may not have their issues, but is this a justification to apply these taxes over the town for the next 20 years? I could move 6 months from now and not be burdened with that tax. The next person who purchases my home is going to be burdened with that tax. If my children choose to stay here in Falmouth, they will be burdened with that tax. The neighbors of these turbines, once they're gone, can pack up and move and not be burdened with the tax, but everybody else who chooses to stay here will. This is not the best option for this town. There are other options. What can we do? How much will they cost? We need to investigate what those costs will be and how that additional outcome can be. We can use $8.4 million, and in my estimate, that's conservative on the operation of the turbines. It can be much more than that over the 18 years, and that money can be used to defray the costs of the water filtration plant. It can be used to defray the costs of the wastewater expansion, the additional energy burden of the wastewater treatment plant when it expands. That's what those turbines are there for. They are there to cover those additional benefits and services to us as a community. Please let us look at this as a whole picture. Let us understand all of the options. I ask that you vote no on this article.
Mr. Stetcher.
Bernie Stetcher, Precinct 3. I just have a quick question. How much money does this actually represent on the tax rate to the average person? I know we have figures for every $1 million, the taxes go up a certain amount. I'd just like to know what it would actually going to cost us.
Ms. Harper.
Mr. Jones has that answer.
Oh, Mr. Jones.
The total cost to an owner of a home valued at $471,000 would be $800 over the 18 years. I'll repeat it again. Over 18 years, if your house costs $470,000, it will cost you $800 total.
Ms. Elder? You're on the list, Mike. It's getting to be a big list.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Elder, town meeting member from Precinct 6. And like you, I'm a citizen who embraced the idea of a town turbine. Of course. The project was presented as having no impact, none, on the neighborhoods, and as bringing income and renewable energy to the town. No negative impacts to the neighbors was repeated over and over again. No cost and no risk to taxpayers. Now, we're being told that we must have turbines at all cost and at any risk. Unlike you, my neighbors and I were left facing the terrible and unexpected consequence of noise pollution due to an industrial-scale turbine placed too close to our homes. I would like to be very clear that I am not here simply because I'm bothered. I've been profoundly affected in ways that go far beyond casual annoyance. I'm in favor of turbines where they're appropriately sited. I was in favor of this project before the turbines became operational. And I'm strongly opposed when they're not. I'm here because I want my life back. I want to enjoy the home that my husband built 23 years ago, where we raised a family, planted gardens and trees on our 2-acre lot, which is contiguous with 100 acres of conservation land. And it's less than a mile from an aging parent. I want the fundamental security of being able to sleep in my own bed and to enjoy the fruits of our labor, free from the random pulsing and disturbing noise of an inappropriately scaled turbine sited too close. I'm here tonight in support of the selectmen who have acted decisively after 3 long years to untangle this problem and to unite a divided community. Considerable time and resources have been spent studying the issues. The first costly noise study of Wind 1 took many months, but it was inadequate to determine compliance with state law. Then the Mass Department of Environmental Protection took it upon themselves to sample the noise in a limited number of instances for just the Wind 1 turbine at night. They checked 4 locations. They found consistent violations at one site. Exceedances were measured all 4 of the nights that measurements were made at that one spot. One other location of the 4 in Craggy Ridge showed a near exceedance on one of the 2 nights that it was checked. Any violation found at a spot sampled location is representative of a wider occurrence. Obviously, testing 2 turbines operating together at night would only further widen the extent of those occurrences. And I would like to make the point that the figures of lost revenue are all predicated on the fact that these turbines would be running with no curtailment and no time that they would be shut off during the night. And I would also like to make the point that there are huge uncertainties with those predictions of revenue. As we know, Wind 1 was down for 8 weeks or more already this year because of a broken fuse. And variations in the wind are as high as 21% in any given year. If you're not familiar with it, noise data is difficult to understand, and testing has been a very controversial subject. At the very least, it's understood that the turbines must be curtailed at night to stay below the state's guidelines for gross noise pollution. DEP testing clearly corroborated the neighbors' complaints regarding sleep disturbance, and the turbines were curtailed. Then, in May last year, the Board of Health collected testimony from 41 families who reported a host of negative health effects due to the turbines. 41 families came in and testified that they were having negative health effects due to the turbines. There are over 50 families that experience flicker or strobing now due to Wind 2 on the other side of Route 28 from Wind 1. That same month, last May, the selectmen formed the Wind Turbines Options Process Group to seek and vet potential solutions. I participated in that process, and it was no hasty assessment. It was an 8-month-long process, 24 meetings, and I attended every one. Many documents were reviewed. I spent hundreds of hours on this issue. Several new reports were commissioned with the input from a team of technical advisors, all of this funded by the Clean Energy Center, somewhere over $300,000. The process clarified how any operation plan for the turbines is fraught with huge financial uncertainties, costs, and continuing suffering and strife in the community. After this exhaustive process was completed, the selectmen held a public meeting after this 8-month-long process, followed by a month of public comment regarding which plan was best for the community as a whole. They received hundreds of emails and letters. Finally, the selectmen chose an option. It wasn't the option that some people wished them to choose, but it is their authority, and they chose. They decided to repair a community that has been torn apart by an error in siting of these particular turbines, and to protect the health and welfare of all the people in the community, not just most of them. The neighbors are deeply grateful. We're deeply grateful to the selectmen for the strong leadership and the moral courage that you've shown on this issue. And I think you should be too. Please support this article and vote together with the selectmen and the Finance Committee to bring this to the ballot. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Swain, next on my list.
Brenda Swain, Precinct 6. I have a brief quote by Maya Angelou. It's part of a quote. I've learned that whenever I decide something with an open heart, I usually make the right decision. I've learned that even when I have pains, I don't have to be one. I've learned that every day you should reach out and touch someone. People love a warm hug or just a friendly pat on the back. I've learned that I still have a lot to learn. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's the end of the quote. I strongly dislike being part of a community that is in constant discord and more inconsiderate of the feelings of neighbors, whatever side of this issue you find yourself on. I received countless emails, letters, and phone calls from both sides. There is no winner here. The turbines are our mistake. We didn't ask enough questions, seek enough complete answers. Most of us are proponents of wind energy and other creative energy resources. But they must not be at the cost of our whole community's health and well-being. These are the wrong size in the wrong place. Please, let's cut our losses, own up to our mistakes by each taking $1,000 over 20 years, $800 over 18 years, to begin to rebuild this community. Until now, Falmouth neighbors have always been about helping each other. Please vote in favor of the Selectmen's article.
Ms. Siegel?
Deborah Siegel, Precinct 6. I gave you some information at last November's town meeting, and I'd like to update that for you. In December 2012, the Renewable Energy Foundation, which is a registered charity, that's what they call it in England, no political affiliation nor corporate membership, and what they do is commission reports. The Renewable Energy Foundation issued a report, peer-reviewed study. They promote sustainable development for the benefit of the public by means of energy conservation and use of renewable energy. That's what they do. What they found is that the economic life of onshore wind turbines is 10 to 15 years, not the 20 to 25 years projected by the wind industry. Changes things a little bit. The average load factor of wind turbines declines substantially as the turbines age. By 10 years, the load factor declines by 1/3. As far as I can understand it, the load factor is the average amount of power produced. It is rarely economic to operate onshore wind farms for more than 12 to 15 years. And Wind 1 became operational in March of 2010, I believe. We've just heard some total numbers and what it's going to cost us. For a $471,000 house in Falmouth, and I think a lot of us here live in houses that cost a lot less than that, it's going to cost $54 a year. That is $13 in our quarterly tax payment. That's $5 by the end of the 20-year payment schedule. And even if the house worth is less than average, the payments are less than $13 a quarter. Even if we raise that total of $54 a year to $100 a year because of the lost revenue, can we really consider this a burden? Can most of the people who own a house in this town consider $54 a year a burden? We need to be honest with ourselves. We've all had a lot of emails about the greater good. But when the greater good turns into the tyranny of the majority and demonizes our neighbors, it becomes the greater bad for our neighbors, and that is no good for this community. Our neighbors are paying a heavy price for a sense of satisfaction that some of the town derives from decreasing the town's contribution to climate change. I think many of us will implore the Board of Selectmen, which has had the courage to take this step, to do what is necessary to educate the voters with the facts before they go to the polls. These numbers that I've just quoted have got to be repeated over and over again because they are the facts. And that's not all of what we're getting now. Thank you. Please vote for this article.
Mr. Duffy.
Michael Duffy, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator, fellow town meeting members. This is obviously a very, very large issue before us this evening, and as has been stated, I don't know that there are any winners in this, except for the fact that maybe we can help others not find themselves in the predicament that we are in this evening and that our fellow neighbors have been in for 3 years. I put aside some of the study and some of the facts that I was reading about and decided to take a ride out to one of these sites a couple of weeks ago. And it was a day that it just so happened that they were working on the turbines. So I got out of my truck at the top of the hill of one of the driveways, and a big truck was going by, so it made a lot of noise. And as I walked down the driveway, and the truck disappeared, but the noise didn't disappear, and I started looking into the sky to see where that low-flying, no exaggeration, that low-flying C-130 was coming around to do some landings or whatever at the base. And I'm serious. I'm looking around and wondering what is going on. And a gentleman stepped out of the garage that I was standing in front of at his house, and I said, you know, I apologize. I obviously picked the wrong day to come out and listen to this humming, this pulsating noise that I've been reading about with the turbines, because there's some kind of other activity going on in the air, and I can't hear that turbine over this other noise. And he just looked at me and he said, Mike, that is the noise. And my mouth dropped open. And I've got to just tell you, I mean, I just could not believe what I was hearing. And in stronger words than this, I said to him, you've got to be kidding me. 3 years? This noise? It was just, I'm telling you, I was just stopped right in my tracks. And at that point in time, I didn't need to read any more studies about sound levels that don't have a table established for them yet, so that we can't say that this low-level noise, has a threshold that's been exceeded or what have you. Throw it all out the window. If you were standing there with me, you'd have said the same thing. And while I was there, another couple came down the driveway and said a similar thing, that this turbine doesn't make anywhere near the noise when you stand underneath it. It's much quieter. But I need to tell you this, as God is my judge, I just was floored. And at that point in time, I thank the selectmen for the courage to put this before this body so that we can put this to the voters, and hopefully, I certainly can't impose on these neighbors to allow people to do the same thing, but if people have the opportunity to drive out in this area here and listen to it when the wind's blowing 10 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour, not 20 miles an hour, just 10 miles an hour, you'll be mortified. And you'd say the same thing to yourself. You'd say, this is wrong, and this has to stop, and it has to stop now. And we need to be part of the solution, if you will, so that other folks in other communities don't have this impact. And I know it's not a popular thing with a lot of folks, but it is a fact. And besides that, we do need to bring this town back together again, which Falmouth has always been great at, being a community for others. I've been to you before for similar type of issues, that the only body that could help is this body here, and I just urge you to please make sure this gets to the voters, and then hopefully they'll have the wisdom to say the same as others have said this evening, that these just are misplaced. And it's a good technology and so forth, it's just misplaced here. Let's be part of the solution. Thank you.
Mr. Neto. Microphone to the left here.
Joe Netto, Precinct 9. I would like to remind the body that this issue obviously needs to be determined in its outcome by the citizens of the town of Falmouth, and not us here at town meeting. This goes way beyond, I think, the scope of what we thought our job entailed as town meeting members. And whether or not, personally, whatever your feelings are, I would behoove you to vote for this, to put this on the ballot and let the citizens of the town of Falmouth who go and show up to vote that day determine that. And that's what I've always said on every Proposition 2.5 ballot question that gets in front of us, that we should let the voters decide. All right, that's a statement. Now the question. And the question is one that I'm confused, and maybe I just missed the answer. I guess I would direct it to Mr. Suso. I have the article rewritten, the explanation that the town clerk sent to us via email last Thursday or Friday. And as I read this, my confusion, Mr. Suso, comes from this. You have down here under the explanation the sum of $13,987,670. But in the motion, we're asking for $8,269,000. My confusion is, am I correct in saying is this you're going to ask us for money more than once, or why the difference between the two figures? Because as I've shown this to other people, that's the same confusion that they have. I'm just trying to get the facts out there so that the voters who are watching this tonight, you know, when they look at the financial part, and some will and some have to. There are those group of people that have to do that. But I think we can get the right figure. That's just confusing to me.
We've already borrowed that amount. The difference between those two numbers, we've already voted to borrow that. But Mr. Suso, if you want to add to that.
Mr. Moderator, I think it would be most helpful if Finance Director Jennifer Petit could answer that one directly.
Sure. Ms. Petit.
Thank you. The difference, the $8.2 million that is in the motion tonight is what we would borrow for the payback of the ARA funding and also the $3.4 million to dismantle the turbines. The $5.7 million that brings it to the $13 million is the debt that's already been bonded that we would have to exclude. So the total amount on your tax rate would be the $13 million. There's a sheet that explains that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, my last 6 speakers spoke in favor, so I'm going to go down my list, and I'm going to try to find somebody that's opposed to the motion. Ms. Fenwick, you opposed to the motion? No. Ms. Whitehead, are you opposed to the motion? No. Ms. Putnam, are you opposed to the motion? No. Mr. Dick, are you opposed to the motion? No. Mr. Herbst, are you opposed to the motion? No. Mr. Moriarty, are you opposed to the motion? No. Mr. Donahue, are you opposed to the motion? A question? Okay. The reason why I'm doing this, this clerk's asking me, you've never done that. The reason why I'm doing this is I had 6 people in a row that spoke in favor, and I'm trying to find someone to speak in opposition from this list. So I'm going through my list, and I'll add additional names to the list.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Murphy. One thing, I wish you had given us a flyer on your motion so I could have read it and really absorbed it a little more than just the presentation. But I believe in your motion, you mentioned that all this is predicated on going to the General Court of Massachusetts and for their approval. Is that correct, number one?
That's correct. For part of the debt, the debt that is not already borrowed, it would be like the equivalent of taking a loan on a car without having a car. We don't have an asset, so we would have to petition the General Court to be able to tax the folks, do a debt exclusion without an asset.
Okay. Now, here again, reading the Cape Cod Times and the Enterprise, I read that the state has already said no, they will not support us in this effort. At least one body of the state, and I'm not even sure what they were. my point is, sir, is that if the General Court of Massachusetts declines this, then where do we stand? Or is it just an automatic, we'll get it through? Because I believe that the state believes in the wind turbine. They made a commitment with Falmouth to do this. And it's like anything else that you make a commitment on, and then you feel one part of it is wrong, and you're either standing there or whatever, and you're saying, you know, how do I correct this? Well, the other person doesn't want to correct it. They like it. They like it just the way it is. So if they say no, what do we do then? What's the next game plan? And why wasn't the committee's report and all the other options that they came up with given to this body at the same time? So that, I don't have no idea what those things were. Thank you very much. That's all.
Mr. Murphy?
On both of those issues, in regard to the special legislation, that's very similar to a home rule petition. We're talking about a different part of the government that we would be applying to. It is the part of the government that is represented, meaning the legislature, both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, those folks all have constituents in their particular areas who need and ask for the same types of legislation. Many of those folks in other parts of this state may need to be able to apply for the same type of home rule petition, in this case, special legislation. There is no guarantee. I've told everybody as we move forward, there is no guarantee with this special legislation. If that happens and we're refused, we'll be back to town meeting with another solution, because we can't borrow the money without that special legislation. Did you have another question?
My problem with this whole